It seems like since Opus 5 has been released, people have discovered it's really good at making 3D web games. Carpathy used it to make a low-poly animated Lord of the Rings scene, someone built a snow version of the game Journey, and someone recreated the early stage of Pokemon in a 3D scene. But the best thing I've seen by far is Claude of Duty by Matt Schumer, which he built in one prompt. He's since open sourced that prompt and the whole technique he used. So let's go through how it works, and let's see the game I built using that technique. Also, if you like these kind of videos, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really does help. The Gauntlet Loop, a name coined by Matt, is the prompting method that has been used to make the best looking web games I have ever seen. And this technique is nothing new. Generate a small unit of code, get a different agent to review or critique that code, improve it based on the critique, and repeat. In fact, Jared from Anthropic used a similar technique to port Bun from Zig to Rust. But the Gauntlet Loop has a judging technique that is more suited to subjective work. There are 4 things to keep in mind in order to use it well. It requires a clear goal, not implementation details. Tell the agent what you want, but not how to do it. Next, it needs a real bar. Not something vague like make it amazing or production ready. It needs something more concrete that it can compare its work against. Matt used actual screenshots of Call of Duty. For a website or app, this could be screenshots as well, or a high-level diagram, and for backend work, this could be a test suite. 3. The work needs to be split by a lead agent into smaller units that can be judged and improved upon. It needs to figure out what work can be done in parallel, and the builder should never judge its own work since it has a bias to thinking its work is good. And finally, the loop should never end unless you manually stop it at a place you're happy with. This is because if you set a bar high enough, there should always be something to improve. If we think about the most popular pieces of software like Photoshop, Spotify, or even Google Chrome, these teams have hundreds of engineers always improving the product, even though from an outside perspective, it's pretty much done. Now, there are a few things about Matt's prompt that I don't like, but I'll go through that later on in the video. But now I'm going to use a Gauntlet Loop to recreate one of my favorite games of all time. So to do that, I've copied Matt's meta prompt, pasted it into Claude, and I can press Command G to see it inside Neovim. Everything is pretty much his boilerplate, apart from me adjusting this bit to include Burnout Paradise. I've also added this paragraph so that Claude uses Firecrawl to find screenshots of the game to compare against. It uses Firecrawl to find the correct audio and sound effects from videos, and it also uses Firecrawl's search feature to do some research. This saves me spending hours to find all of these resources. Now, the whole purpose of this meta prompt is to create another prompt using Matt's original prompt inside of GitHub. So I've actually run this command earlier inside of Claude Code, and this is the prompt it produced. So here it's telling Claude to build an open world arcade racer in Three.js at the level of Burnout Paradise. It's using Firecrawl to get all the resources, and it's breaking the game into smaller pieces that can be improved. Now, I'm not going to run the Gauntlet Loop right now, despite the fact that Claude is going with it, because I've already prepared for this video and done this earlier. So after running the loop for about 34 hours, letting it spawn 251 different subagents, totaling 412 million tokens used, mostly cache reads, this is the game that was produced. Okay, it's difficult to talk and play at the same time, but we can see we have a fully playable Burnout level, which looks incredible. I mean, I'm doing drifts, I've got boosts by pressing shift, and I didn't have to do any of this myself. Claude did all the 3D modeling, it did all the lighting, it did all the sound effects, it's got all the music, and if I collide, we get this very cool crash animation. Now, unfortunately, there isn't any collision with the oncoming traffic, but what I can do is in the pause menu, I can change the time of day to dusk, night, dawn, or whatever. I can change the dampness on the roads, the color of the car, and so on. And I can play the game with those settings applied, which is all super impressive. I'm actually going to have a link to this game in the description if you want to try it yourself. And it's amazing the amount of things the loop did behind the scenes in order to get to this stage. If we take a look at this progress page created by the model, we can see on the right are screenshots of the actual Burnout Paradise game, and on the left are screenshots of the game that Claude created. and we can see how it tried to get close to these specific screenshots in every single aspect, from environment to car deformation, and even down to the game HUD. Now, I will admit I did run 2 different Gauntlet loops because the first one produced a game with really bad performance. So if we scroll up, we can see here that it did another round of tests specifically for performance. We can see here the amount of judges per round, which also exists in the screenshots as well. But these are the things that helped make the game performant. And there's much more. The model took thousands of screenshots to track its progress. So if we take a look at this first one, this is the first iteration of the game with this HUD. And it was able to end up with a game that looked like this by focusing on specific parts of the original game screenshots, turning them into grids like you can see here, focusing on each cell in the grid, and then trying to replicate that in the game it produced. So here is a grid from the game it produced, and here is an improved version of that scene with clouds in the sky and a lamppost over here. And it did this throughout the whole process, comparing things like reflections in the ground, and even things like global illumination levels. So what does this mean for game development as we know it? Is it over? Well, not quite. Even though this is a very impressive demo built by one person, it's a demo. It's far from the standards of a game that I would pay for. It's missing a gameplay loop, races with other NPC characters, time attacks, collectibles, and even though I could prompt these things into existence, for a project as big as this, when an agent has to add another feature, usually the features that were working before kind of stop working. And for a project I don't completely understand or have any creative direction towards, I don't have the desire to prompt fix it over and over again until things get fixed. Besides, let's go back to Matt's prompt because there are a few things I don't like about it. Well, just one thing. The whole process requires you to use Ultra Code, which, for those who don't know, is the highest effort level in Claude Code. And considering we're already using expensive models from Anthropic, to be expected to use the highest effort level as well kind of means you have to have deep pockets to run a Gauntlet loop. In my experience, especially with Anthropic models, you can get great results on lower effort levels like medium or even low. And also, if you have paid for multiple cheaper AI subscriptions, you can use Opus 5 as the lead agent and delegate work to these cheaper subagents to make the whole process cheaper. Trust me, I've run some experiments to prove this. In fact, if you want to see these experiments and have a look at the skill I use to delegate work from Claude to cheaper models, then check out the next video.